Although the open beta for BF 2042 is long gone, and a few days back we learned exactly what Hazard Zone is, there's been a ton of detail and new stuff released since then, and it's mainly come from a couple of screenshots and additional information from developers on the game replying on social media and Reddit. So we're going to take a look at everything today because there's some really good stuff here that looks promising, and I don't know why a lot of this context was left out before the open beta went live, because if you played it and you're a long-term BF fan, you may have noticed that a lot of things in there were missing, and if it's your first impression on whether you want to buy the game or not, you might just think, well, okay, so this is how the game is, why is that missing, why is this like that, and then you formed your opinion. Of course, it's an open beta, and it was advertised as that. But what we're going to go over today, I think it would have been really useful if DICE had communicated this stuff before the open beta went live, maybe in a blog or a video, because they did say the build was a couple months old, and with all of this additional context, it's obvious to see that that was in fact the case, and a load of features were just not in it. So we're going to take a look at that today, because a lot of people don't go on Reddit, they don't check developers' Twitter feeds. In fact, it's a very small percentage of the player base that are actually involved in this space. There are millions and millions of Battlefield players, but we're the hardcore focused super fans, I suppose, who look for this stuff all the time. So we're likely to see it, but for everyone else, the vast majority, they're going to miss this stuff. So to start off, we're going to take a look at some new key art for Portal and Hazard Zone, and this was just quietly added to the Steam store. And I think it's trying to capture the idea of what Portal is, or what it's setting out to be. It's a mix-up of different Battlefield games in a big toy box, and you can just do whatever you like. And for a lot of people, this is going to be great because it means that you can customize the game. If you don't like specialists, well, you could just run a server where specialists weren't enabled. You just put BF3 classes on, for example, or BC2. And the Hazard Zone key art here, there's Irish with his waffle, otherwise known as the data drives that you collect in the game. This dude here is Espinosa, that's Sundance, and that's Casper at the back there. Just thought it was a pretty cool image really, and wanted to show you guys. Also, if you take away the weird Zs from Hazard Zone, it says hard one, and now you're never going to be able to unsee that. So as for these gameplay additions and tweaks that have been made to the game, all of this stuff is coming to launch according to these developers. So let's get stuck in. We're going to keep it quite simple though. On Orbital, that was the map in the open beta, you may have noticed that there weren't really that many tanks around. And if you tried to call one in, more often than not, it just wouldn't be available. But the level designer has said that they're increasing the number of tanks on the level to 8. So previously it was only 2 per team, 4 in total. But at launch it's increasing to 4 per team, 8 in total. So there'll be way more tanks on the battlefield, spice things up a bit. They're adding strafe input to sliding. So with the slide in the open beta, you could only go straight pretty much. But they're adding a bit of horizontal movement to it at launch. They're adding support for vaulting on moving objects, because apparently there are several maps in the game where there are massive moving objects that soldiers can walk on. They didn't elaborate any further on that. Sounds cool. The enter and exit animations for getting in and out of vehicles are a lot shorter than what they were in the open beta, and have mostly been removed for 2042. I know a lot of people didn't like those for BF5 because you felt like you were locked in and committed to that animation and it would get you killed a lot. They're gone now, or rapidly sped up. Jump spamming too. A lot of veteran players didn't really like how this felt in the open beta. Kind of really felt like COD in a lot of ways, didn't it? Where you could strafe, jump repeatedly and shoot at the same time. That's being addressed. Jump spamming is being toned down. The next two are quite big though in my opinion, and I don't know why this stuff wasn't talked about before people could play the open beta. So big one, the weapon, soldier and vehicle customization is in the game. It wasn't in the open beta, but it can be done from the main menu and during the match. So it was very limited in the open beta. The only weapon customization you could do really was with the plus system, but it appears that there will be some kind of loadout and customization for guns and vehicles in the menu. So I hope that would be similar to what we had in BF4. Maybe it'll be a bit similar to Gunsmith from Modern Warfare. Perhaps not as complex as that, but it's going to be there. So you can save your loadout, save your guns, etc. The next one is about the minimap. So I did this all the time when I was playing 2042. I would be running along, playing Conquest, and I'd press M. In any other Battlefield game, when you press M, it brings up a map on the screen. I don't know what the key is on console, but it's there. And I'm sure that you guys do it a lot too. And it just gives you an overall sense of how the game is going, and you can decide for yourself or with your squad, okay, let's move towards A or B or whatever flag and help over there. That was gone, and for me personally, that really had a big impact on how I played. I missed having that map. Again, that is in the game, just wasn't in the open beta. So that will be there. They fixed the elevators. It was quite funny actually. You get in an elevator in the open beta and everyone would just sink through the floor. They turn up at the top eventually, but this is because these are proper moving elevators and they hadn't quite got it worked out when they branched off that open beta build, but they say that they work fine in the main game. They've optimized and fix the FPS drops when you're aiming with a scoped weapon. I noticed this a lot on PC, especially if you were using a high zoom, high magnification scope. You zoom in, the outside would blur and it would still be rendered, but you could feel a massive drop in your frames per second. That affects how smooth the game feels, and it also affects your mouse sensitivity and makes aiming and shooting, controlling recoil horrible. It just felt awful. They say they fixed that. Numerous other bugs have been fixed too. They say they've improved the revive mechanic as well. No detail was shared in particular about what that is and what improvements they've made, but I think the biggest complaint from people when they were playing was the defibs and the revive just takes way too long. So I assume that they've sped that up and just made the overall animation look a bit cleaner, a bit more polished, AAA. Here's a quick look at the hazard zone deploy screen. So this will be when you're gearing up with your squad. In hazard zone, you can only pick one of each specialist, so no duplicates here. So you'll have to converse with your team, figure out what kind of gameplay style you want, and then pick that specialist accordingly. As for the tornado on Orbital, they've upped the percentage chance that it can appear way more apparently, and they've improved the timings of it for launch. I only saw it once in about 8 hours of playtime in the open beta, so it felt like the chance was pretty low, maybe 5 or 10%, something like that. They've increased that chance for the launch of the game. You're going to see it more. It is such a cool effect. I don't want to see it too much though, because I feel like it just distracts everyone. So I'd still like a low percent chance, but at least see it maybe 2 in 10 games, something like that. Let me know what your thoughts are on that. Would you want to see it more times or fewer times than that? Also, the level designer alluded to the fact that on Breakthrough on Orbital, one of the capture points is 128 players, or it can be on next gen and PC, in just the assembly building alone. Now, if they're referring to Orbital, I assume the assembly building is that giant factory with the half-built rockets inside. 128 players in there? I mean, that's going to get pretty crazy. I'd love to see it. And all this stuff that was left out of the open beta and not explained, it makes me wonder, what else have they left out? Like, we didn't get to see any of the progression. We didn't get to see all the guns or the vehicles, unlocks for the vehicles, modifications for the guns, the remaining 5 specialists. DICE did say though that there is gameplay coming for those later this week. So when that releases, I'll be sure to make a video on that with all the information. This is quite interesting too, the Battlefield 2042 Intel Wars audio story. So this popped up on the official Battlefield podcasting avenues. It's on Spotify, that's where I listen to it. And it's a 12-minute audio log, bit of world building about BF 2042 and the data drives, Hazard Zone, just about the general story of the game. And as far as I can tell, the intended way of discovering this was from the Hazard Zone trailer. If you go frame by frame here, you can actually see a QR code on the crane, and there's one frame, only one frame, where there's no motion blur on it. And if you scan that, it links to a page where you can listen to this short audio story. But it's out there now, it's been discovered, and if you're interested in the lore of 2042, it's a good listen. But something else that was in the open beta were the radio stations and Bluetooth speakers. Did any of you guys notice this? If you were wandering around the map in a quiet area, you may have heard some audio coming from a Bluetooth speaker or a nearby car. Well, this is also world building, and it's essentially radio stations or podcasts within the game. And on Orbital, I just got a car and I listened to the radio. You can change the station as well. There's multiple stations, some with podcasts on, some with different types of music. And I found this one which was about a conspiracy theory, and it all related to the map that I was playing on at the time, Orbital, in the open beta. Just have a quick listen to this.
So that puts Ryder, McAllister, and Campbell all in the same location. Do you know what this means?
I mean, it's Hollywood, right? Who else is it gonna
Yes, yes. It is why I love working with you, Whitney. Hollywood it creates these fictional battles, just like this one in French Guiana. So let me repeat that, all right? Just try to absorb this, all right? They create them from the bottom to the top. Why? So they can make movies and TV shows about them for years to come. We're talking trillions of dollars in ad revenue. And I tell you what, if this sounds a little bit crazy, then that's because Hollywood wants you to think that.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sound crazy to us because we know what they're capable of, right? I mean, look at Kubrick and moon landings and a bunch of other stuff.
So I'm sure there'll be a ton more of that in the final game on each level. And just think about everything that they could put in there, especially Easter eggs. Go to a certain channel at a certain time and then you hear Morse code. I don't want to give them any ideas, but that's a strong possibility down the line. And that's about it. I mean, there was this infographic with some beta stats on there. If you're interested in studying a bit of analytical data about the game, DICE released that. And that's all. As I mentioned, DICE have said that they are releasing more info and details on the remaining 5 specialists this week. That will probably be in the form of a video like they did with the previous 5. And when that's out, we'll take a look at it together. And with that said, thank you for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the vid, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.